What do you think is?
Well, I think that if we're looking at identity, I think that, like I said, it's personal identity. Identity must come from us, and it must come from your parents. The unfortunate thing is that what's taken place in the last 500 years has made people feel less than what they are. They've done it successfully with African people. Now it's turned around and bitten them in the backside because it's now happening to their people. Especially their women. Their women are not happy being, they were put on pedestals and thought they were beautiful, and they will not admit that they're beautiful. And even with all the makeup and the cosmetic surgery, they still don't think they're beautiful. So it's had an adverse effect in relation to our own experiences. But I certainly think that identity needs to be looked at. And you talked about the laziness. I wouldn't say laziness. I don't think they would.
By laziness, because I don't want to misunderstand. By laziness, I mean our parents.
I wouldn't say they were lazy. Let me finish, and then you
says
can.
That they're not seeking to know.
I don't.
For example, you would have experienced this. We call the conferences. We call the seminars.
Yeah.
I mean, look at something like this. How many of us are here?
Yeah. I don't think they're lazy. I think if you don't see a structure with a design, then how do you know how to teach it to the next generation? That's what the problem is. Yeah? If there's no structure, if you don't know what a structure is, then you won't know how it's supposed to be designed.
If there's no culture and discipline to underpin that, then
because you need something. You need to have a frame of reference within your own experience in order for it to transcend to the next generation.
You don't seek to know.
What's that?
You know.
Well, this is it, most people don't want, I think with African Caribbeans especially, I think because of the time that they were slaves, work, especially when it came to this country, work became more of a value than their own family. And this is a fact, and we have to admit this. Work came first. Even when we were leaving school and unemployment was going high,
that's what.
Obviously they were living at the time.
Let's just, can we just
just
circulate the questions and then let's just try to, keep the time constraint because everybody got questions. So I'll go with this brother here, then this brother here. Yeah. This brother had his hand up a long time because I know I seen him, and then of course Deliel fourth. So this brother here first.
Yeah, again, sorry for interrupting. The point, there are just 2 or 3 short points. I was interested that you made mention of, is your research based on anything to do with biblical or Quranic references or sources for particularly I was interested that the Quran says, we've created you in tribes that you may have a sense of belonging.
Yes.
And the fact that the Israelites were in 12 tribes, not 1 tribe, that each tribe must vie with the other in good works.
Yes.
So that's one important point. The sense of belonging comes from that.
Yeah.
And of course the mother in the Islamic jurisprudence is 3 times more important to the child than the father. The Prophet was asked, so that's an important thing. As far as the laziness, I think it's complacency. I've worked many years in the Sudan, which I love.
Yeah.
Terrific. And but the Sudanese say we were not made for this life, but the next. And that we're too light for heavy work and too heavy for light work. And of course our brother here is saying about the engineer. In Gaza, you see, we're seeing history repeating itself. Now the Arabs, the Gazans, are being punished by the Israelis. Before it was the Israelis being punished by the Romans and others. And of course the Egyptians who were, I think the Pharaoh was not a European. And so there is a history that is repeating itself. And so every tribe or every nation has to repeat the mistakes of its past. And so those are just the points. But the Sudan, and I've spent a lot of time in Africa, and Nigeria as well. But Sudan is my favorite country.
Okay, thanks for that. This brother here.
Just to go back to you.
Okay,
We are Nuwabians, yeah?
Say it again?
Before we were Moors, we were Nuwabian.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're talking about identity of the woman and not responding to their own characteristics as African women, it weren't a mistake or it weren't a joke that they threw the slaves in the field to pick cotton, because cotton resembles our net of 9 curls. So obviously a lot of people now working in the cotton field got this illusion or disillusion that they didn't want kinky hair, because it wasn't the right hair, so they become more Europeanized. That's all I was quoting on when you talk about identity. identity.
Well, that's another thing what identity does. When an identity is corrupted, especially if you look in this society, many women say they're not comfortable with their
That's
look.
why they're not comfortable.
Either their
They
chests
don't
are
know
not
where
too
they
big,
are.
and either
They
their
don't
chests are
know
not big
where
enough
they
or
are.
it's too small.
They need to be
Their
shown
nose
and
is just
taught
not right.
right.
Their lips is not. You know what I'm saying? So what that is where there's confusion with identity. Something has gone wrong, and one of the things which has gone wrong, which has been allowed to get through, is the media.
Of course.
Yeah, the promotion, advertisement, this type of thing.
Bleaching skin, all the media thing.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
This brother here, and then this brother had his hand up for the longest. Yeah.
Sorry, just a couple of brief points. I remember, and I'm sure many guys will remember, I kind of in the say, early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. One was Bruce with kids
Yeah,
when they had the
Bruce.
steers on.
Alex, yeah.
And the relevance here is, you know, when you're saying that youth, generally speaking, everybody wants to be part of something. They want to be a part of a collective, a recognized collective,
Yeah.
and a collective with integrity.
Yeah.
Yes. And the bullet point were from mine. One was the roots, what came on, because I can remember, and I know a lot of people remember kind of thing, it made an impact, a strong impact.
Yes.
The second thing we'll call it, again, early 80s, Babylon, with Osborne, the group, Osborne,
Yeah,
kind of thing. Bristol Ford, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, straight away kind of thing, because I remember me and some guys, I remember we probably watched about 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And that's purely because you are making people see what we're going through.
Yes.
Yeah, I can identify, and I'm glad that other people can see,
Yes.
and some of the parents can see some of the tension.
Yes.
Yeah, within the workplace. Because it's like, it's nice for the work kind of thing, but let nobody fool the kind of thing, work is no joke. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
and the third point I just want to mention really was the release of Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
You know, I know for myself, I know for a lot of you kind of thing, don't like, what's the word, I suppose, the pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only word I can think of. The pride to know what they call it, that a man stood up for what he believed in. That was, but it's just awesome kind of thing, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
Of course. Well said, sir.
Oh, this brother had a question there. And then this brother here. Nah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that on a world scale, yeah, that even though people are defining Africa to be this or that, the reliance on Africa is ever so much now. Because I watched a documentary the other day. 70% of minerals, foodstuff, wheat, rice, fruit, is coming out of Africa. Minerals even, they've got
Congo, which is called 23 trillion.
and
resources.
the mineral amount of what they've got
on there.
the mineral amount of what they've got, 90%, 90% of mobile phones
Everything,
and
technology
is reliant on that, and they've got it. I think it runs out in, I don't know, 20.
Well, that's one of the problems with contemporary society, is that it's not even a problem. It's something that we need to recognize historically. Africa has always been used as a breadbasket.
Yeah, man,
And not just Africa, all those countries which have been put through this derogatory experience, their resources are being used.
Because they're saying that in Europe now, they're saying that in so many years there won't be any food stock. And they'll be very much reliant on Africa. So they can bling up or paint up them fears and grow them here and everything.
Well, we have,
you need food to survive.
yeah, I think if we go back to history, if you go back to the Roman times, say for instance, when Rome was in Africa, say for instance, all that time he was in Africa, Africa was just a breadbasket for Rome.
Yeah.
It was a burden to keep it.
Yes.
It was a breadbasket. The amount of grain and wheat that they were taking out and spreading throughout Europe to sustain his people was just unbelievable, especially his army. Because you can't send an army out to not feed them.
Well, the rickets and everything, what they had rickets and everything, it wasn't for the fruit and that, they didn't even know about them.
That's right, yeah, especially the citrus fruits and stuff, yeah. Okay.
Belly.
Two questions.
Okay.
They're not, I have no points to make, just strictly questions.
Okay.
I'd like extensive answers.
Okay.
What are the benefits of the collective? One.
Okay.
Two, what lessons are to be learned from the African Caribbean experience for those who are in African Caribbean?
What's the second one?
What are the lessons?
Lessons to be learned.
Lessons
No,
to be
they're
learned.
not African Caribbean, but are now assuming what you spoke about earlier, but now they're next to the country.
Right, looking at the benefits, okay. The first one, if you're looking at the benefits of a collective, being part of a collective, the first thing, it's a natural inclination, it's natural. It's natural to belong, yeah? So when you don't belong, it becomes unnatural for you. You put yourself into an environment that it's going to be pathological, it's going to be sick. You put yourself in a sick position. The next thing as well, what takes place within that unit, the other benefit of what takes place within that unit of the collective is that you're part of a structure and you're part of a function. In other words, a structure, you're a member, and then you operate in a particular way, you conduct yourself in a particular way, and it's recognized by the collective. And if the collective recognize your contribution, what happens? Self-esteem, confidence. So this is what we thrive on this. This is why a lot of young girls especially, they want to become singers. Why? Because they want people to love them. It's natural. Yeah, so that's the benefit. And when people love you and stuff like that, you feel love. And then you want to give love. But when you're not getting love, you find it hard as an individual, as a person, to give it back. And this is something what collective does. If you look at people who come from larger collectives and smaller collectives, those who come from larger collectives, those who come from collectives at all, operate, conduct themselves much more better, and they have a much more healthier lifestyle because they don't take everything on their self. What's that?
Any examples that you've observed that have some elements of positive attribute collectively?
Okay, if I look at my experience, for instance, I was born into an extended family. So for me, by the time I was born, my grandparents were there, my parents were there. Yeah, I had cousins and stuff staying over. So I had that initial kind of belonging. So even if, for instance, I didn't go with my mother and father, I know I got with my grandparents. So there was always somewhere you can go for comfort. And we all need that. And you can only get comfort from a collective. If you look at people who are individuals who stay in a home and stuff, who are they getting comfort from? They're not. And they're being stimulated and they wind themselves up, and then this is when they say they become pathological and they disassociate themselves, they suffer with dissonance and this is what's happening now. The more you see pathology taking place is the more individuality seems to be proliferating within society. There's a relationship between those two things. Yeah. So collective is very important because once you've got a sense of belonging, you automatically have a function. Automatically. Because you've got a structure.
So is that why the Asian community thrives a lot?
They thrive a lot because they have a structure and they have a function. They have a particular design. Okay? That design is based upon particular structures, which is a husband and a wife becomes a mother and a father. In other communities, unfortunately, they become mothers and fathers, and then they become husbands and wives. They're doing things backwards. The oldest structure is that structure. It's worked for 250,000 years. So why is it in the last 400 years that there's been shifts, especially in our community? But that shift was in a position, because remember, when the Europeans went to the coast of West Africa, the first thing they declared war on was the family. Because when you take a woman out, when you take one woman out, for instance, you take her from 8 functional roles: mother, daughter, wife, sister, grandmother, auntie, niece, and cousin. Yeah? Once you take this woman out of that role, she may be 6 or 7, or she may be 2 of them. Instantly, that function destroys. And that's how Africa turned in on itself eventually. And the labor was there and stripped, taken somewhere else. So the labor which that woman would have been doing there is actually gone. And what happens, it burdens the community then, because 2 people's got to do that job. One person's got to do the job for 2 people. Yeah. Okay, so this is what happens. So there's 8 roles you will play when you're part of a structure or a family unit. And the next question, I won't answer that. Lessons to be learnt. Well, the lessons to be learnt is that you'll find that in most studies that I've read, women and men who come from collectives who get married, they have happier marriages. There's much more equilibrium, there's much more balance, and there's much more unity, and there's much more understanding. Because feelings is something which has been nurtured within the collective, love, affection. An individual thing, it does lack. That doesn't mean it's there, but it doesn't have as much as the other one. If you get too much love from one and not enough from the other, the one who gets too much love benefits more. Okay? So that's answered the two questions.
And I just want to make, like, as again, being a student of people of knowledge. There's two things I want to just kind of add. Now, saying being from America, growing up in Jamaica, being in England now for the last 12 years, saying I managed to have a perspective on as far as the grassroots motivational journeys of people in communities. Now, the first thing, when you look at the United States as far as post-slavery period, some of the most prolific individuals that actually fought for civil rights and human rights are from the United States of America. Now, basically, looking at the United Kingdom, looking at England or the UK, now after more or less, post-African Caribbeans coming here, the majority of them coming in here in the 50s, and when they was moved towards civil rights, I'll give you an example. The population of African descent people in America is more or less same as the population in the United Kingdom, percentile-wise to the population. Now, after the civil rights movement in the United States, of course, with the passing of Malcolm Martin, when it reached its zenith, of course, then you had the Panthers, groups like the Panthers, you had Jesse Jackson, with Operation Push and so forth. But what they did is that they seized the moment. They said to themselves, you know what? In our educational institutions, we got to get some type of a education for our people. And so what they did is, okay, the whole struggle got curved, but then they got education. In a secular society, which is school, in public school, you cannot say God in school, you get excluded, expelled. You can't say God in American school, in public school. Right? You know what I'm saying? Because it's secular, religion is secular from the state. So basically for them, they pushed towards education. And they fought for that, and they got that. Now, when I look at an overview of the UK, right? Because that's them looking long term. You know what I'm saying? They know that they're gonna be ostracized. They knew that, just from thought. So they push for education within public schools, right? Which now they have a national holiday, right? Now when I look at the United Kingdom, I know people have been fighting for that. I know this brother here has been fighting for that. I know people in Bradford and London. But what happened was, when now these people put up the fences, not nobody, but as a collective, the resistance was inevitable to say, look, we fighting to the death. We want education. We want something in these public schools, because when like you just said, young people are in school and sleep more than they with their parents, right? And of course, from our situation, we still got single families, or we still got two breadwinners due to what? Economical circumstances, you know what I'm saying? So basically, you know what I'm saying, that push has not been in this country. And another thing, a lot of us look at America as the biggest devil as far as systematically. Has anybody ever been to Liverpool, been to Liverpool Museum in Liverpool? Anybody in here? I'm in it. Does anybody know Eric Lynch? Eric Lynch, he does the guided tours of Liverpool. Eric Lynch. If you go to Liverpool,
that's where you get lynched,
right? Yeah, but Eric Lynch, historically we know the concept, but I'm talking about Eric Lynch from Barbados. He's born, bred in Liverpool, basically. And he does a guided tour of Liverpool, which of course was the richest city in Europe through the slave trade. So he gives you a guided tour of the buildings when they were built, who built them, so forth. Anyway, he goes to this one building, and I had a group of young people with me. And he said to me like this, he said to the young people, look on that building up there. And he said to me, don't say anything. When I looked on the building, there was an eagle. On top of that eagle, there was a lion. And then he said to the group, what country's emblem is an eagle? He said to me, don't say anything. He said, and they didn't know. He said, now tell them, United States of America. On top of that eagle was a lion. He says, what country's emblem is the lion? These are all British-born young people. They ain't even know, right? He said, Britain. He said, hold on. You know what he said it represents? This represents, he said it straight up. this represents the order of things in a certain fraternity that you guys don't really know about. This man might have some knowledge of it. But what it says is that in this fraternity, England, far as the brain, will always be on top of America in this particular order, right? Then he took us to the right, Barclays Bank, the oldest Barclays Bank in Britain. When you go on the entrance, basically, you see, of course, you see a European man, an overseer like this, standing up, and he had his hands like this. They had two little African boys. One headed that direction, one headed that direction. And you can see they was African. This is in the Liverpool right now because of the hairstyles and the braids and so forth. And then he said to the young people, "What's that?" They looked and they says, yeah, I can see they look like two little black kids. I said, "They are." He said, "You know what this means? And this is Barclays Bank. Anybody that's supposed to be pro, whatever they think they are, whatever, Barclays Bank, this is the #1 bank that capitalized from everybody that they transaction with Barclays." Anyway, he says like this, you know what this means? In that same science, as long as you're in this country, I'm looking to make you go the opposite direction. In this particular frat fraternity, you're going to be in the opposite direction in this country.
So what fraternity we're talking?
You know what I'm saying?
Illuminati? Which one we're talking?
It depends on how you look at it, right? But the point I'm trying to say is this. My last point is this. It's like, what's your name, the elder brother here? George was just saying about laziness. It's not. I'll give you an example. In the United States, you have the most, as far as black on black crime, there's nothing like it. But let me tell you something. As far as movers, as far as people that are pushing, you have some of the best right now from African descent people, some of the best people right now coming from that country that are pushing for change. What I've noticed in the UK is this, right? We got a lot of knowledge, but we ain't out there peddling it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of us. I'm gonna say this. Another thing. I'm gonna say this. He said about imitation. He just went through, of course, identity, right? And he spoke about children, and of course, how do they learn through instruction or imitation, basically. Now, a lot of us, you know what I'm saying? We can profess what we profess to the maximum. But if we ain't laying that, like he went on talking about, of course, the identity and the values. If we ain't laying down proper values, if we're saying one thing to our children and doing the other, as long as we're doing that, and you think, yeah, you can try to give them that verbal instruction, but they know from imitating, like you said, they're gonna do what you're doing. So you can say don't smoke drugs, you can say don't sell dope, you can say whatever, you can say yo man, whatever you can, you know what I'm saying? Go to school education. They don't see no moving, they don't see you doing it. They ain't doing it. Or they're only going to do it to when they can break out that door and do what they want to do. That's the reality of it all. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to make them points, basically. That's just my perspective from the whole.
Take that on board.
Definitely.
I hear you.
Well, I was just saying that America also, you know, don't get tricked by you, you know, because they put in the president like he's the first black president. How many black presidents before
America
this black
Obama?
president?
How many presidents?
Anybody?
Five black.
Now,
Five altogether.
Five. Not even with Obama. Five before Obama.
Before
I know there was 4.
Yeah. So America's a place here. You can go for. You can get pushed as a black man. But they let you go so far. Yeah. They let you go so far.
Now, I hear you. This brother.
Ultimately, what is the goal? Is it for non-English British citizens? Assimilation, or is it separation, segregation, or is it a third way?
Well, assimilation, I think you got to look at the word assimilation. When I teach sociology, I look at assimilation and integration, for instance. Assimilation is where somebody in themselves refuses to acknowledge their culture and break someone else's. That's assimilation. Where they look at when I teach about integration, it's a way of going in to the mainstream but preserving yourself. Yeah. So integration is the best way of going. Now this is what they talk about multiculturalism and stuff like that. But multiculturalism to African Caribbeans doesn't mean the same thing to Asians, and it doesn't mean the same thing to white people. So we need to look at this definition. What does multiculturalism mean? Does it mean that everyone else is at the bottom? Because in America, multiculturalism means white people at the top, everyone else at the bottom, but all the same. And then the African-centric movement is basically saying, well, no, this is not multiculturalism. Multicultural means we come together.
That's right.
And they're saying, no, you disunite in America. Because there was even a book which was written about that basic principle, that if Africans come to the same level.
Is there anywhere in history where multiculturalism works?
The only time, there's a couple of places where it's worked successfully, and what you have to understand is that this racism is only new. It started in the 1640s. Prior to that, there was no such thing as what we know as racism today. Yeah, you had disputes between ethnic groups and racial groups and stuff like that, but that was because the vibe wasn't right, not because of how they looked. Yeah, so historically, but where what you call it now, where a multicultural society was successful, one of them was in Cardiff, which was Tiger Bay, and very successful. They got a very old mixed community there, which goes back from about the 1850s, 60s. So even when you arrived in this country as somebody who was a foreigner, Tiger Bay was the place you would go. And you literally mix in because all the scum, even the European so-called scum, were thrown on there as well, or considered undesirables. Yeah, and obviously the other successful one was in Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, where multiculturalism was, really, really good.
And in Mecca, of course, where multiculturalism has been there for over 7,000 years.
Well, the ratio of multiculturalism, there's elements, there's only maybe 2 or 3 ethnic groups really there, but multiculturalism, as far as what we know as multiculturalism, the nearest one would be things like Al-Andalus. You have over 50, 60, 70 different ethnic groups.
But currently, what Malcolm X found when he went to Mecca, he saw that there was multiculturalism writ large there, and that changed his view.
Well, yeah, it changed his view in a sense because of the philosophy which was being taught and what he experienced. This one brotherhood, and the essence of all worshipping the one God, everybody was the same, a doctor wasn't considered any more than a road sweeper, etc., etc.
And the other point is that with Andalus was for 6 centuries, you had the golden age of the Jews and the Christians. And a friend of mine who is a specialist in studying history and the origins of conflict, if you read Al-Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun, you will find that the thing that was missing from his book was any reference to interest or debt-based borrowing in the state. The secret of the success is if you have an absence of interest, you can have peace. If you have debt and interest, there's no possibility of peace for any country or any people.
I have to say, Andalusia was the African kingdom in Europe.
That's right, yeah.
Founded around 711 by Tariq. Okay, so revered by his people that they named the escarpment on which he built his fortress. On his second visit, because the first time he went as far as Paris, which is 400 troops. When he returned to Africa, it took more than 700 and more troops and horses. And when they crossed that stretch of water, he used the escarpment to build a fortress in case they encountered difficulty, because he intended to go beyond Xeres, right? And his people named it Gebel Tariq. This is what is corrupted to Gibraltar.
That's right.
My question as well here is, people keep talking about multiculturalism. And here you gave Andalusia as an example, you gave Tiger Bay as an example, etc. in history. Now, what is meant by multiculturalism? Do you mean that in Tiger Bay, or maybe in Andalusia, there were different cultures within the society?
Every culture had a value.
Let me just finish my question. Do you mean that there were various cultures within the country, or in the country?
Yes.
And that country then practiced aspects of each culture? Because that's when, to me, it will be multicultural.
What?
Because if it's just a question of you come from X, you come from Y, you come from Z, and you come from W, but the dominant practice within that community will be X.
No,
that's not
multiculturalism.
That's
no.
not
That's not multiculturalism.
So
what America, that's the multiculturalism America wants, that's the multiculturalism that Britain wants, and it's clear. This is clear, that is what they want. However, when you look at the minority groups now, multiculturalism from one minority group to another is not the same. Multiculturalism for African Caribbeans usually basically means, because they're the most despised people historically in this country. So the fact is multiculturalism means that for everyone to accept them. That's all it basically means. And they want their culture to be accepted so their culture could be preserved. Yeah? The Asian community, multiculturalism for them means something totally different again. And sometimes, because they have a caste system, yeah, which is intrinsic to their culture, there's elements of color gradations which is at play. So unfortunately, we can include the true aspect of the Asian encompassment experience into that. Yeah, Chinese is a similar thing. We don't have a caste system, but that white privilege thing is still amongst them. So that is one of the problems. There's what they call inter-ethnic conflict.
then it becomes, for me, becomes a misnomer.
Yeah.
And it's a ploy.
Yeah.
It's a way of those who want to be in control all the time, as you already said,
Yeah.
I think, to lump everyone into the same pot.
Yeah.
And I'm never, ever, ever going to relinquish my African identity. I don't give a damn who says, not say. It's well known here and everywhere I've taught that I so detest this term BME.
Yeah.
In recent times, I've had to use it for political expedience because I was trying to defend a structure that this council in this city has destroyed now. Okay, and so I used it in documentation, but I so detest it. What the heck is a black and minority ethnic community?
Well, that came about because there was a form of specificness. Because ethnic actually means even. It comes from the ancient English word meaning even. Yeah, or what's the other word now? There's even and there's another word as well. Heretic. That's where it comes from. That's what ethnic means. It comes from the proper Old English. I've seen in the dictionaries. And then eventually it means something else now. Now the reason why they say black minority ethnic is because blacks were not considered as an ethnic group because they were Christian. It wasn't either. So that's why we got black, minority, and ethnic. They know what it means. And that's the reason why. Okay.
But you see what I'm saying about the science? What I'm trying to say, you see what he just said there? This is the science of the United Kingdom. People be thinking that, when I'm talking about sleeping, you know what I'm saying? So he's just showing you how they do their science. It's cloak and dagger, ain't it? You know what I'm saying? Whereas in some countries, it's like me growing up in Florida. You know what I'm saying? I knew in Florida, living in Miami, I know when I go 8 miles down the expressway, I'm in Davie. This is Klan territory. And I know what to expect. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the UK is on some cloak and dagger. You know what I'm saying? You don't even know what's going on.
And they plan,
you know what I'm saying?
They plan for 200 years. They plan for 200 years.
Brother, what I'm talking about, you can't really think about yourself, my brother. You have to think about
collective. That's what talk.
Brother, not every collective is not the same, brother. It ain't the same in the UK, brother. When you look into the UK, you got to look at the communities that are the most disenfranchised. If you say you know, why you ain't doing better? Why we ain't doing better?
We are doing better.
Man, come on, man. That's a smoke screen. Look, Uncle just said it, man. Uncle just said it, didn't
my
he?
teacher's my elder.
Yeah, and he said it, isn't it? So we got to learn from the elder. The elder said we put these things on where the people. So if we're doing good, where the people at?
The people are.
That's not fair, bro. That's not fair.
I hear about this still today, me.
That's not fair.
Look, brother, you know what it is? You know what it is, man? Let me be straight with you, man. I just say it as it is, you know what I'm saying? I don't even hold no holds barred. We've all got a perspective, right? You know what I'm saying? And I respect each other's perspective, but let me tell you something. Man, I've lived here for 12 years. Understand? Living here for 12 years, man, we gotta look at productivity. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Crime.
We're not crying.
Where's the
We're
movement?
late though, Brent.
You know what I'm saying?
Wait, hold on.
Where's the movement?
Can I just say-
Straight.
I don't want to bring any sort of tension to it, but
Nah, he-
the brother's American, right? The brother's been talking about.
Speak freely, man.
You seem to suggest that there seems to be some movement in the US.
There's a movement here too.
That is more visible and more
Prominent.
progressive than
That's what
the
they
movement
mean.
here. First of all, our histories are different. You know what I mean? Our histories are very different.
Like he said, there's a commonality though, isn't there?
But I think it's unfair to say that just because there isn't a movement, you know, of any description here, and we haven't got any sort of
Just be plenty
leadership,
of movement.
then nothing's happening.
Just be plenty of movement.
I'm not saying nothing's happening.
But I think we've got to be fair on ourselves.
There's been
right?
plenty of movement, even before no one
Let him say what he got to
Right.
say.
I agree with you, there could be a lot more participation, right? And take this event as an example. Yes, there could be more participation. But first of all, we've got to look at promotion. Secondly, firstly, we've got to look at what are people doing. You know, if you said if you said to a man, right, you want to come to this thing and hear what I want and hear about our culture and our, you know, issues about our future, or, you know, you want to go find a work, or you want to, you know, that's what they're doing. This is not a priority, you know what I mean? And to some extent, we're lost. You know, if this isn't a priority, and this kind of discussion, debate, and knowledge gathering isn't a priority, then, you know, there's something wrong, right? But I think it's unfair to just, you know, blanket everybody and say, well, why, you know, we're finished because nobody's coming to this kind
It's
of
not. It's
thing.
that ain't, the point I'm trying to say is this: is like fundamental aspects of community moving forward, right? I'll put it like this. I'll just give you two examples. After the civil rights struggle in the UK, after the civil rights struggle in America, the core of the civil rights struggle, right? Long-term thinking, you have to say, look, I know they're going to constrict me. It's just natural. They're going to constrict me because now I'm in the media. They're going to constrict me, right? So on that constriction, what can we lay down to make it easier for our upcoming generations?
We haven't got that intellectual movement that is able to kind of design and construct those sort of concepts.
I think we do.
We do.
We haven't.
What do you mean by
We haven't. Hold on,
what do
let's
you mean by
listen to him.
intellectual?
Now let go. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I'm not saying there aren't any intellectuals. I'm saying we haven't got that body of intellectual kind of discourse. and
What sort
discussion.
of intellectual movement did His Majesty Marcus Mosiah Garvey the Great have when he organized 10 million
And laid the
Africans
blueprint.
around this
No,
planet?
I'm not saying.
You must never, ever forget those things.
No.
This great man
Right,
set
right.
a precedent
Let
for
me
us.
read one.
And if we
And he
want
said-
to, if we want to put it to one side and say, oh, we're now living in the 21st century, we're now living in Britain, so we must do this.
I didn't
That's
say that,
when the
George.
mistake lies. No,
I
I'm
didn't
not
say
saying you
that.
said that. I'm saying
And
if we do
and
that.
and that wasn't implied.
That's
What
where-
I
that's
what
where
I
the
said was
mistake lies.
we haven't got a kind of body of.
We're not organized.
Exactly.
And that's what the great man said.
Thank you.
Organize or perish. And that's why we're in this state. We're not organized. People are all wanting to be who the hell they're not.
You know a lot of them academics from America. You know where they come to learn? They come right in this country. They come. Well, I'm saying they come here, don't they? They come in the UK.
Yeah.
They don't. They travel. They come here. Some of the greatest leaders, they come here to learn because they know that one of the belts of knowledge is in this country. They know that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like going back to what I'm trying to say is this. I'm sitting on this one panel in education. I'm in this one little education forum, and on this panel, right, this one little guy, he pulls out this African Caribbean development type of initiative for teachers, right? And he pulls it out, and he had it on the shelf, and I'm saying, he says, yeah, every schools get this, but it's not incumbent upon them to teach it. So he says every school gets it, but it's not incumbent upon them to teach it. Now we gotta make it incumbent upon them, and that comes from a man doing what he gotta do.
Well, that's
So
more first becoming governors.
you know what I mean?
That's how you get through. If you want to get it that way, you got to get on the government board into the institutions. But first and foremost, the original USA is us. United States of Africa, not America. First and foremost, yeah. Like Brother Garvey said, yeah. And I'm not disrespecting anything you got to say, but you come here late. I can show you video in 1988 of Black Consciousness Movement in Sheffield here. But even that was
Nah, that's my, what I'm trying to say is, man, I'm saying from the height of the struggle, the height of the struggle in America was in the 60s, right? Going to the end of the 70s. Same thing, the height of the struggle here, 70s, going into the 80s.
1956 Notting Hill riot.
Brother,
Remember that?
I'm talking, yeah, we know about the riots, I'm talking about organization.
What we are talking
You know what I'm saying? When they started organizing, big brother.
That's where it stemmed from.
You know what I'm saying?
Let's have a chairman. What we're doing now?
Now, this brother's got a question anyway. This brother got a question.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, we're gonna eat that question with you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that one time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say that more time, you know, I'm just to back up some of what you're saying is that, you know, I work with youths and things, and there's a lot of times where I go to meetings, you know, say, and I'm the only black person in this meeting, and there's other black professionals that are around the city right now. It's not for me to say why they're not there.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? But sometimes I find myself, I'm the only black person in that meeting, I'm the only black professional in that meeting. And it looks terrible. You know what I'm saying? Because there's black youths within the system who needs our support, you know, who needs the education, etc. Right? But, you know, I'm just thinking, where are these people at? You know, and as soon as you begin to say, well, be a little bit critical, people get a little bit hypersensitive.
This is
you know
what
what I'm
I'm
saying?
saying, yeah, of course.
And there's no need for that. There's no need for that, because we should be able to be critical. You know, we should be able to criticize ourselves. You know, constructively, but we should be able to look at, you know, things which we are failing in, as well as highlight things we have done well. We can't just sit here highlighting what we've done well. I'm not understanding there's some ways we still need to develop. You know what I'm saying? So
Just before I make a move, right? Okay. This meeting here summarizes everything to me. Yeah, it's supposed to be about humanity. Yeah, don't even bring the colour into it, because if we can't come together, yeah, as individuals, yeah, as collective, yeah, what we're doing, you know, we're fighting against each other, we're arguing against each other. It shouldn't be that way, yeah. It's a universal thing. Exactly. It's a universal thing. Yeah, just as America has done its part, England has done its part also. Yeah, so it's a universal thing, it's a humanity thing. It shouldn't be about colour. You cut someone in bleed, it's red. It's that simple, you know what I mean? So that's all I have to say. Peace out, yeah.
Anybody got any more questions?
Yes.
I really want to have a presentation on unity.
Anybody any more questions before we eat, guys?
Jeff, were you just trying to say basically there's no strength in our character in England because we've been broken down that much?
I'm not.
I feel that, you know what I mean?
Nah. The point I'm trying to say is this. Now, there's a lot of. Nah. I'm gonna say it as it is. I gave an example. Right? Right now, within the country right now, right, you have to look at the situation like he spoke about earlier about and not that going back to what this brother said, that's not just amongst African Caribbean people, there's also other disenfranchised groups, basically. But now, when you're going into education and you're not trying if now we've got certain aspects of autonomy to use what we got to use the tongue, right? If we're not using that to make changes, you know what I'm saying? We're not back in the days when it was about picking up arms or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Even though some groups still do that, but now you've got, you know what I'm saying, you've got a system where you can put petitions in, you can highlight certain things and make changes. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, you can highlight certain things and make changes. So my point is this, education now, you know what I'm saying, for especially, you know what I'm saying, African descent people, right? Like Uncle said, I don't want to use the word BME because it's changed. Since I've been here, I've seen 4 or 5 changes. You know what I'm saying? Since I've been here, you know what I'm saying? But basically, individuals now that are call it in deprived areas are getting a raw deal. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of us who know, it's fair enough saying that we know, what are we doing? If we know something, we supposed to try to, you know what I'm saying, galvanize individuals to make a move. And when you know something, so whether you know it, you might know it in the mind, but it's not really manifested itself for you to make that change, for you to make a move and do something. But sorry, brother, but I know that people here in this country have been, you know what I'm saying, trying to make movements for centuries. I've met a lot of them, right? But you know what it goes to say? It's the same thing. I'm gonna say what it says. Some people say, boy, it's laziness. Some people say, boy, it's individualism, self-interest. They get a little position. Some people spoke about some people that was in the 70s who was hot on the agenda of civil rights, and they gave him a massive, nice job. He told me, and I don't want to say his name, and he just simmered down, isn't it? They put the money in front of him, and so his values was in the money, as you spoke, and he simmered down, whether we like it or not. But then you got people who say, nah, man, I'm staying true to what I'm saying. Until I can see this change, I'll go without.
We will always have the former.
Of course.
I always said that. And you will know this. During the enslavement period, the ones who used to sneak out of the fields while our great mothers and fathers were plotting to overthrow and possibly kill the enslaver, the so-called planter. And they would sneak around the back door and reveal these plans and get their piece of chicken and few biscuits. We still got them among us. Yeah. People must understand, I'm serious, you must always remember that those genes are with us now, right? I will go back to ancient times, our great ancestors, which always gives me this indication. From the first time I went to Cambridge with my teacher, Dr. Ben, outside the temples, it said, man, know thyself. They have stolen it, they lied, and they said Socrates said that. Socrates was a damn stupid Greek who studied in Africa and was taught. Of course. They never taught me this in school, right? One of our great ancestors, 5th dynasty, Pharaoh Keti I, about 5,000 years ago, said the following. I'm trying to demonstrate to you that our people have always been conscious of the fact that we must know who we are and stick to it. He said this. He said, follow in the footsteps of your ancestors, for the mind is trained through knowledge. Behold, their words exist in books. Open them and read them and follow their wise instructions. This was over 5,000 years ago. An African was telling African people that, right? So they foresaw what was going to happen. And what are we doing about it? We're discoing. You organize, look at the center down on the wicker there, right? Over the years, we organize conferences. They don't come. As I asked you, look at us here. How many black people are in Sheffield or Spital Hill living, if you like, or Burngreen, right? But you organize a conference or a seminar, you call them to come in there and let's teach. And my brother, with respect, there's nothing wrong with us so-called arguing among ourselves.
Nothing wrong.
And this is another way we put ourselves down. The Caucasians do it. The Asians do it. They all do it. They argue among themselves. Why is it when we come to debate, people are always knocking this? There's nothing wrong with that. I've learned things here tonight because of this argument and stuff. Do you see? And you organize a conference now, you go see how many will come. But you just go and say, next week Saturday, there will be a competition of DJs at Saturday at 48 Wicker. Doors open at 8 o'clock. You come down the Wicker 6 o'clock, see them all queuing there. You take a magazine like African History and African Business and Culture,
I don't want to know.
which our dear brother, Dekanu Ariane, started in London. And a lot of our people who were West Indians till today said it wasn't for them, right? You take a magazine, £3, lousy 50. I'm standing in Sadiq here. Number of times I'm in Sadiq, and the black sisters come in. And I stood there one day last year, I'm telling you this, right? I'm standing there looking to buy sweet potatoes and that, because unfortunately that's where I got to go for it. Right? How many black people lived in this city? I still have to go to an Asian shop, no expression on Asians. They're doing what they're doing, right? And I'm standing there, and two sisters went around the corner. They picked up some extensions. Now this bloke is new in the shop, so he's asking the one who's serving me with my yam, how much this is? And he said, I don't know. Ask Sadiq back yonder. And when he asked Sadiq said £69.99. And this newcomer, we don't know where it come from, Pakistan or Bosnia or whatever, he was so flabbergasted. He looked at the thing and he said, no, I mean this. And he said, yeah, £69.99. And she bought the damn thing. I went to the till and she put it down there with other things and things and things, right? And I'm standing there, I'm thinking now, George, what a pity, because if I had one of our magazines, like African Business and Culture, or Alarm, or anything like that, the Alarm, what's the other one? The Final Call, or anything like that. So, and I say, here, my sister, you know, this is £2. She looked me up and down, and then she said, she won't buy it. But what is the, you see, we have to face these realities. We have to face these realities.
Sorry, brother. This brother one. Yeah.
But don't forget, you know, the football one, that's their biggest religion.
Now, read this. All right, let's go ahead. What you saying, brother?
This is the brother who's the historian, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I've noticed lately, I never really thought about it, but you know, there's a lot of the cities predominantly filled with like Asians and blacks, right? And then we've got like, you know, other cultures as well. They're kind of more welcome into the city. They like, you get Polish, and where you'd expect more unity, but really there's quite a lot of conflict.
Well, there is.
How do you know? I'm asking a question, but it's kind of like, why do you think this is? But how and what's the reason?
One of the reasons is because they were able to control their structures. If you go back, I'm not sure if you were here. If you go back, they were able to maintain those over the centuries. Yeah. So there's a level of consensus. You know, there's a level of cooperation. So the things become minor. When they have these conflicts, it becomes minor. When people are broke, they don't have these things. The problems are major because there's nothing. You know, there's no what's what I'm looking for now? There's no value system. There's nothing there. There's no consensus amongst particularly what they should and shouldn't do. Should they conduct themselves in this way or that way? You know, and that's what happens when people lose these kind of things. They become very. If you look at these social constructs, once these are gone, you become an individualist. You lose the collectivity when you lose these constructs.
Would you say also by introducing like people away from their families, so a lot of like cultures that come to the city, they come away from their strong family backgrounds, and they pick up these habits, and then they that kind of is a way of infiltrating the communities back home as well.
Sometimes I think you got to look at different people at different moments of time and stuff. You got to look at the pressures. Thanks a lot. You got to look sometimes at the pressures that some people are under. Now, obviously, like when my people came over in the 1950s and 60s, they had to assimilate. They had no choice. That's how they had to get on. But they believed in the system because what they were taught. Because I was quite surprised when I was growing up. I wanted to learn everything about Jamaica. My parents didn't know anything about Jamaica. They did not know Jamaican. They didn't. They didn't know African history. Yeah. They knew everything about 1060. I was surprised. When I came home and I was doing homework on, you know, the Norman invasion, they knew. They knew more than the teacher. And I said, well, how do you know about the Normans when you were brought up in such and such country? So this is what I mean. And what happened was they viewed this country as being the mother country, which would help them. And that in itself tells you these are the people who relied on someone else. That's exactly what this tells you. These were the people which were reliant on someone else. And you can't rely on someone if they restrict or exclude you from mobility within society. You can't, because they will end up destroying you. And that was one of the major problems. So when you've got other people coming to the cities like Poles, they remember they may have gone through oppressions and stuff like that, but their social constructs were not taken away from them. They're still in place. There's still some consensus. There's still some sort of cooperation and understanding. They still maintain their language. Do you understand? So you find that people who got these things get on much better than people who've got these things missing. Okay, so I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah.
I want some food. So we can talk again on that. I don't even know if we've got time to do the because most of the questions which came up after my talk was going to be addressed in community.